It started with a joke. That's what he'd say if you asked him. It was just a joke. But you and I both know that's the kind of thing people say when they get called out for being cruel. Like cruelty gets a free pass if everyone chuckles afterward. Anyway, I'm Connor. I'm 27. I work in logistics, which basically means I solve everyone else's chaos with spreadsheets and coffee. I've always been a quiet guy, not because I don't have opinions. I just got used to keeping them to myself, especially around family. Growing up, my dad, Ron, was what people would call a character. You know the type. Loud, center of attention, makes everything a performance. At barbecues, he was the guy doing bad stand-up with a beer in one hand and the other gesturing like he was killing it on stage. Except the jokes were usually about me, or mom, or whoever wasn't fast enough to laugh first. I learned early on that if I wanted to survive the evening, I had to laugh too. Mom passed when I was 19. Cancer. Fast and cruel. After that, whatever buffer she provided between me and my dad vanished. It was just the two of us in a house that echoed. He didn't know how to be alone, and I didn't know how to grieve with someone who thought vulnerability was a punchline. I moved out when I was 21, got a small apartment, started building a life. I didn't go no contact or anything. We still saw each other. Holidays, birthdays, occasional weekends. But the dynamic never changed. I was still the kid he mocked for being too sensitive, too stiff, too boring. Last month, we had a family dinner. My cousin Emma had just gotten engaged, so there was a celebratory thing at my uncle's place. I almost didn't go. I was wiped from work, but guilt got the better of me. I showed up in a nice button-down, brought a bottle of wine, even picked up flowers for Emma's fiancé, who I'd never met before. The moment I walked in, my dad grinned and called out, "Look who it is." The spreadsheet king must have calculated the exact time to arrive for maximum attention. Everyone chuckled. I fake laughed, hugged Emma, and slipped into the background. The night went on. I made small talk with relatives, helped set up the dessert table, tried to keep things smooth. I was good at that. Keeping things smooth. That's kind of my whole thing. Then came the part that turned everything. We were all gathered in the living room after dinner. Emma was opening a few engagement presents, and my uncle had his phone out, recording. Someone handed Emma a gift from me, just a custom photo album with blank pages for her to fill in over time. I'd had her name and her fiancé's name engraved on the front. She loved it, got teary, said it was thoughtful. I smiled, genuinely happy to have done something right. Then Dad, standing by the fireplace, cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a monologue. "You know," he said, "Connor here's always been the thoughtful one. Thoughtful with his gifts. Thoughtful with his silences. Thoughtful with his disappointments." A few people chuckled nervously. I felt my chest tighten. Dad grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. He's the kind of kid who apologizes to you when he messes up your Wi-Fi password. The kind who still triple checks his budget before buying new socks. God forbid he ever throws a party. He might combust. The laughter got louder. I stared at him. At first, I thought it would stop there. A dumb roast. But he wasn't done. He raised his glass and looked me right in the eye. "To my son, Connor, you're nothing but a disappointment, but at least you're a polite one." And everyone laughed. Not uproariously, not maliciously, just enough. Just enough to make the air feel thin. Just enough for me to feel like I was 10 again, at the backyard grill, while he made fun of how I cried at a Disney movie and my cousin sprayed soda through his nose from laughing so hard. I didn't say anything. I just stood, nodded politely to Emma, and quietly stepped outside. No scene. No drama. I drove home. My hands shook the whole way, and I kept hearing the words in my head like a song stuck on repeat. "You're nothing but a disappointment." That night, I packed my things. I don't mean suitcases. I mean everything. I took down the photos on my wall. I grabbed my birth certificate and documents, deactivated my social media, canceled my old email. Every tether. Gone. I even changed my phone number the next morning. I didn't tell anyone. For the next 2 weeks, I focused on work. I poured everything into it. My boss even commented on how locked in I was. I smiled and said I'd cut out distractions. I didn't tell her that distractions included my entire family. I rented a new place across town. Bigger, brighter. No old furniture. No framed reminders. I switched gyms, moved my direct deposit to a new bank, told HR not to forward anything to the old email. I deleted my dad's contact. Then my uncle's. Then the rest. I didn't feel angry. Not exactly. I felt hollow. like someone had reached inside me and turned the volume all the way down. The truth is, I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Not in a theatrical way. Not in a cry for help way. I just decided I didn't want to be the target of someone else's entertainment anymore. Especially not someone who was supposed to protect me. I thought that would be it. Cut the strings, walk away, rebuild. I was wrong. Because exactly 2 weeks later, he showed up at my job. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had back-to-back meetings that day. I was coming back from the break room, coffee in hand, when I saw him through the glass doors at reception. At first, I didn't recognize him. He looked smaller, puffy-eyed. He had this frantic energy, like someone had dropped him into a world he didn't understand. Then I saw his hands, gripping the counter, and I knew. My stomach dropped. I ducked behind one of the glass partitions and listened. "I'm looking for Connor," he was saying. "He works here. He's my son. Please, just tell him I'm here." The receptionist, Jordan, sweet guy, looked uneasy. "Sir, if you don't have an appointment or a badge, I can't let you past the desk." "I'm sorry." Dad's voice cracked. "Just tell him I'm here. Please. I need to see him. I need to talk to him. He won't answer me. I've tried everything." I didn't know it would go this far. That's when I realized he was crying. Real tears. The kind I'd never seen from him. Not even at Mom's funeral. Jordan gently shook his head. "Sir, I have to ask you to wait outside the lobby, or I'll have to call security." And my dad, Ron the Loud, Ron the Fearless, took a step back and whispered, "I already called them." I stood there, hidden behind a wall of frosted glass, listening to my father break down in front of a 23-year-old receptionist. And I didn't move. I didn't come out. I didn't text. I just stood still. Because for the first time in my life, the roles had reversed. He was the one pleading. I was the one who got to decide if the door opened. But I never got to make that decision. Because just then, the security guard stepped into view. And everything that happened after, well, that's the part you might not see coming. The security guard's name was Mark. Older guy, mid-50s, ex-military type with a buzz cut and a calm, heavy presence. I'd spoken to him a few times during late evenings when I stayed late at the office. He liked black coffee, plain. Always held the door open for people, never smiled too wide. The kind of guy who noticed everything but didn't say much unless he had to. Mark didn't ask any questions. He just stepped between my father and the front desk, one hand resting lightly on his hip near the radio on his belt. "Sir," he said evenly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. You're making the staff uncomfortable." My dad's voice broke. "I'm his father. I'm just trying to talk to him. Is that illegal now?" Mark didn't flinch. "No one said anything about illegal. But if you refuse to leave, we will involve law enforcement. And I'm sure you don't want that." My father's expression shifted. I could see it clearly now from behind the partition. The panic faded into something colder, something resentful. He looked past Mark, scanning the space like he knew I was watching. His voice dropped low. "Tell him he's overreacting," he muttered. "Tell him this is insane. He's punishing me over a joke." Mark didn't respond. He just stood there, unmoving. My dad pointed at the desk. "You know what? Fine. You all want to treat me like a stranger? Like trash? Go ahead. But when he needs help someday, when he finally realizes what he threw away, don't let him come crying to me." And with that, he stormed out. Not loudly, not dramatically, just defeated. I stood there for a long time after the doors shut behind him, my coffee going cold in my hands. Jordan glanced toward the hallway, spotted me, and gave a small nod. He didn't say anything, didn't press, just gave me space. That night, I sat on the floor of my new apartment, still half filled with unopened boxes, and stared at the bare walls. I should have felt something. Relief, triumph, maybe guilt. But mostly, I just felt this strange, eerie quiet inside me. Like the storm had passed, but the power hadn't come back on yet. Growing up, I used to think that love was about proximity. That as long as you stayed, as long as you showed up to dinner or called on birthdays, you were being a good son. That letting someone treat you like a punching bag was just part of the deal. But that day, behind the glass, I realized something. Distance doesn't kill love. Disrespect does. Over the next week, the calls came in through other people. My cousin Emma left a voicemail. "Hey, just wanted to say I had no idea he was going to do that at dinner. I'm sorry. And your dad's been trying to reach you. He's really upset. Can you just talk to him once?" Then my uncle tried. "You're being a little harsh, don't you think? He's old school. That's just how he is." And then came the text from my dad's girlfriend, a woman I'd barely met. I know Ron can be rough around the edges, but he really does love you. He's heartbroken. He's not eating. Please don't do this to him. Do this to him. Like I'd launched some unprovoked attack. Like I hadn't spent decades being the butt of the joke, the punching bag in a dress shirt, the disappointment he tolerated just enough to keep around. I didn't respond. But the thing that really pushed it all over the edge wasn't a message. It was a delivery. I came home late one night to find a large manila envelope wedged into my mailbox. No return address. No postage. Inside was a stack of old photos. Me and my dad. At birthday parties, at the beach, at my high school graduation. He'd circled certain ones with a red pen, like he was trying to highlight some emotional evidence. At the bottom of the pile was a note. It wasn't long. Just 4 words. You'll regret this silence. No signature. No context. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding that note, and I felt something shift inside me. Not fear. Not sadness. Resolve. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one reacting. I wasn't the one trying to patch things up or explain myself or tiptoe around his ego. He was the one scrambling. He was the one spiraling. Because without someone to mock, to control, to jab at in front of an audience, he had no script. And I had no intention of stepping back into the role. But here's the thing about men like my father. They don't give up that easily. Especially when they realize the old tricks don't work anymore. And what he did next was something I never saw coming. It started small. At first, it was just background noise. Little things. My old neighbor from back home, Mrs. DeLuca, left me a voicemail one afternoon. Your dad said you were going through something. I hope you're okay, sweetheart. He's worried sick. A guy from my old gym texted, confused, asking if everything was okay between me and Big Ron. I hadn't spoken to either of them in years. It wasn't just calls, though. My LinkedIn inbox started filling up with vague messages from people I barely knew. One from a guy I interned with 5 years ago. Hey Connor, your dad mentioned you were looking for new work? Happy to refer you if needed. Another from someone I went to college with, who I hadn't seen since sophomore year. Heard things were rough at home. Sending good vibes. At first, I thought maybe it was coincidence. Small town echo chamber, people gossiping, old contacts crossing wires. But then one of my coworkers, Sam, from marketing, slid over during a lunch break with a strange look on his face. Hey, weird question, he said, lowering his voice. Do you know someone named Ron? Ron Kessler. My stomach dropped. Yeah, I said cautiously. Why? He hesitated. Someone by that name called last week, said he was your father. He wanted to confirm your employment status. HR flagged it as suspicious and shut it down before anything got leaked. But dude, it was weird. I felt a chill run down my spine. He's been calling my job? Sam gave me a look. Yeah, like a lot. You might want to say something. Or file something. I didn't say much after that. Just nodded, packed up my lunch early, and left. I took a walk around the block, trying to calm my pulse. It felt like the walls were closing in. He wasn't just trying to contact me. He was trying to control the narrative. That's how my dad always worked. If you didn't let him speak to you, he'd start speaking about you. And he'd do it loudly, to anyone who would listen. I went home that night and did something I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. Not for court, not for lawsuits, just for advice. I found a firm that specialized in family harassment and personal boundaries. A woman named Maya took my consultation. Calm voice, firm tone. She listened, asked careful questions, and didn't once act like I was being dramatic. After I explained everything, the work calls, the note, the surprise visits, she said something that stuck with me. Connor, you don't need to justify your silence. You're allowed to have peace. If someone keeps trying to drag you back into chaos, there are legal ways to protect your space. I asked her what that looked like. She explained restraining orders, cease and desist letters, documentation. She told me what to write down, what to record, and what to screenshot. I didn't pull the trigger on anything that night. But for the first time in a while, I felt like I had options. Power. The next morning, I got an email from an old family friend. Subject line, just checking in. Inside was a polite but pointed note, something along the lines of, your dad is devastated. He says he made one bad joke, and now you've erased him from your life. Everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe try to see it from his side. I didn't respond, but I forwarded it to Maya, just in case. Days passed. Then a week. The calls slowed down, but the pressure didn't. One morning, I noticed a man in a blue sedan parked across the street from my apartment. He didn't get out, just sat there for nearly 40 minutes, engine running, pretending to scroll through his phone. The next day, same car, same spot, different time. I took a photo, sent it to Maya. She told me to log everything, keep a folder, print screenshots, document timestamps, just in case. The fear wasn't immediate. It crept in slowly, like cold seeping under a door. I started looking over my shoulder. I stopped wearing my work badge outside the building. I started locking my front door twice. But despite all that, I didn't reach out to him, because I knew what this was. It wasn't remorse. It was panic. Panic from a man whose control was slipping. Panic from someone who built his identity on being the center of gravity and couldn't stand the silence from the one person who'd finally broken orbit. Then came the letter. Not an email, not a voicemail. An actual letter, mailed to my new address. An address I hadn't given anyone. I came home from work, pulled the envelope from my mailbox, and just stared at it. My name in messy block letters. No return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. No greeting. No apology. Just this. You are embarrassing yourself. No one thinks you're strong for doing this. They think you're petty. They think you're fragile. I gave you everything. I made you who you are. And if you're too blind to see that, then maybe you don't deserve to carry my name anymore. Fix this, before it's too late. That was the moment the fear turned into fire. Because this wasn't about love. This wasn't about a joke gone too far. This wasn't even about family. It was about control. And he was starting to realize he didn't have any left. I stared at that letter for a long time, and I knew this wasn't over. Not yet, but it would be. Because I'd spent my whole life making sure he didn't feel embarrassed. He didn't feel small. And now it was my turn to make some choices. And the next one I made was going to change everything. I barely slept that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of me, reading and rereading the words until they stopped sounding like English. Every line was soaked in the same bitter venom my dad had always used, except this time, it wasn't public. There was no audience, no laughter, just pure, unfiltered rage from a man who realized I had finally stepped outside of his reach. And that last line, fix this, before it's too late. That wasn't a plea. It was a threat. The next morning, I took a personal day from work. I drove to Maya's office with the letter in a clear sleeve, the photos of the man in the sedan, the screenshots of the texts, voicemails, social media messages, everything in a folder. She looked through it all silently, occasionally jotting down notes. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "We're filing a restraining order." Today. I nodded. I thought I'd feel scared taking that step. But what I felt was something I hadn't known I was craving for years. Relief. Maya handled the paperwork. She connected me with an advocate who walked me through the court process, what to expect, how long it might take. Within 72 hours, I had a temporary protective order granted by a judge. It prohibited my father from contacting me directly or indirectly, coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace, or using third parties to send messages. Any violation would result in immediate legal action. The order was served the next day. That evening, for the first time in weeks, the street outside my apartment was empty. No blue sedan. No lingering shadows. Just silence. Real silence. Not the kind that stings. The kind that heals. I wish I could say he respected the order. But some people only understand consequences when they come with handcuffs. A week later, I was walking to my car after work when I noticed a man standing across the street. Hoodie, sunglasses. Just standing there. I didn't hesitate. I took a photo, sent it to Maya, and called the non-emergency police line. They showed up 20 minutes later and found him circling the block in the same blue sedan. He didn't resist. Barely even spoke. They arrested him for violating the protective order. I didn't go to the station. I didn't take his calls. I didn't show up at his hearing. I didn't need to. Because this time, the system spoke for me. He was fined, given a longer restraining order, and warned that further violations could lead to jail time. After that, he vanished. Completely. No more calls. No more letters. No more driveway stakeouts or concerned friends asking me to call him. He was finally silent. And I, finally, was free. The months that followed were strange. At first, I kept expecting him to pop up again, to find some new loophole, to send a birthday card through a cousin or post a cryptic message online. But it never came. Eventually, the fear gave way to stillness. And then peace. I went to therapy. I started reading again, journaling. I took a solo trip to Oregon and stood on a cliffside watching the ocean crash below, realizing I was breathing without feeling like I was bracing for impact. I didn't tell anyone from the family. I didn't need to. Some of them trickled off over time. The ones who chose his side. The ones who called me dramatic or cold or too sensitive. They faded like background noise. And the ones who stayed quiet? Well, silence speaks too. A year later, I got a text from Emma. It just said, "I get it now. I'm sorry." I never responded. Because healing, I learned, isn't about getting an apology. It's about no longer needing one. People love to talk about forgiveness like it's some holy virtue, like it's the only path to closure. But sometimes, peace isn't found in forgiving someone who's never changed. Sometimes, peace is found in the quiet, steady process of reclaiming your own life and locking the door behind you. My name is Connor Kessler. I'm 28 now, and I'm not a disappointment. I'm done pretending I ever was.